Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Rob of the Lair of OmnusI, and today I am here with another RPG-a-day topic word. Today is the 29th of August, and today's topic word is evolve. Interestingly enough, I believe that most people who play role-playing games go through an evolution in their tastes, their styles. We really can't help it. We get this great cross-pollination when we meet other people, even if they have very little experience themselves. But everybody kind of gravitates to a certain common point. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they clash, and in that clash there's friction, but there's also interesting things that can happen. But either way, we're malleable. And all of us at some point or another are very likely to find something different and try to incorporate it into the way we play, the way we enjoy media. And oftentimes we are very active in trying to impress our perspective as being valuable, something that people should consider. Sometimes to an obnoxious degree. Just check out Flame Wars, for instance, or people who troll. These are people who are inconsiderate of other people, attempting to tell everybody and possibly shout anyone down that their perspective is the correct one. And that can go, obviously, too far, and oftentimes has the negative effect of turning people away from your perspective as they see that you're just being a jerk. But honestly, it's it's one of those things that we grow and we adapt and we develop as we go on. And I thought for this I might, trace my own evolution of my styles and tastes in gaming so that, you can get some more perspective from me and, maybe look at yourself and see how you've changed. Because I think we all have. When I first encountered role-playing games, it was when I found my parents' copy of Dungeons and Dragons, which they never used, and were never going to use. They just weren't the right type of folks. They were given it as a gift by somebody who didn't think about what the game was or didn't know what the game was. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they didn't know. So they just got it because it was this cool game that people were getting into. Not knowing that it would be only appreciated by their 8-year-old son. So when I first got it, it was a book. It was interesting stories. I mostly enjoyed the parts about the descriptions of gameplay. Hearing other people enjoy this game. I didn't understand all of the abbreviations, XP, GP, PP, EP, CP. There was a lot. It was a lot of abstraction for young me to try to comprehend, and with nobody else to really play, it wasn't going to happen. But I'm originally from a very small town in the backwoods of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is off in the hinterlands. The town itself, if you called where I was in the town, only had 500 people when I was growing up. So yeah, there was nobody to enjoy this with. I was not a gamer at that point, except video games, of course. Back then, I think it was Pong. It just kind of tells you where I was. So anyhow, when I first got somebody else to teach me these things about gaming, he himself had come back from playing with other people who themselves had played quite a bit, and their styles were firmly impressed on him because he was convinced this was awesome. The way they played was great, and I went right along with that. Went out, and for my birthday I asked for the red box set for Dungeons and Dragons. I devoured that. And now I am in 9th grade, and I'm able to process all this stuff because, number one, honestly, the Back Me set was so much easier to process. It was written in a much kinder style and way to absorb and gather what all these different things mean. Still had the same abbreviations, but it was much easier. And and having somebody else to play with and play off of was great. Especially when, he told me about some of the different games that he'd played, not just Dungeons and Dragons. We really fell for Dungeons and Dragons because it was excellent games, excellent set, with a huge variety of things to do and that you can play off of. And I'm a huge fantasy buff anyhow. My first love was The Lord of the Rings. So I've always enjoyed fantasy. And we played a ridiculous amount. We tried to recreate Top Secret, my friend and I, and from his imagination. And also a healthy dose of Saturday morning cartoons like Mask, with vehicles that changed into flying weapons and tanks and things. So that was a good time. My playstyle back then could best be described as, I would say, I was a simulationist back then. I read the rules, I understood the rules, I made dungeon after dungeon after dungeon that nobody really played. But, making things according to how the rules taught me to make them. Understanding the rules as they were written, and trying to get anybody who would play with me to get in. My brother, God bless him, not a lot of imagination there, was bored by the whole thing. My stepbrother, a good kid, tried. He tried, but he wasn't that interested either. Even as I make this video now, my thoughts and prayers go out to him. He's in Florida right now with a big nasty hurricane coming through. It's not the worst hurricane, but it's a hurricane. You gotta take those seriously. So I'm worried for him. I am. So all in all, my play style was, I wanted to present a dungeon for you and let you adventure through my dungeon. That's how I ran things, which was, I'm kind of happy to find out, was basically how dungeoning was done and adventuring at the earliest days of gaming. It was, I'll present a scenario for you, but instead of a big, elaborate map like in wargaming, instead you've got a graph paper in hand, and I will describe the area, and you will graph it out, and you will make the world come to life for your group. Interesting. I did very much the same thing, except nobody was ever interested in graphing and doing the mapping and stuff, so a lot of times I would map stuff out for my players. So we're playing along, and I'm doing something else that I learned from the Red Box in the Dungeon Master section. It talked about taking these things, these monsters, these pieces, and spinning them using your imagination, creating something else. Instead of a rock ape, I remember the example, you could make a rock and roll ape. Have fun with it, which I did. I enjoyed tweaking things and having fun and coming up with different rules for those things. Still staying within the framework of the rules, however. And had, quite a bit of fun with that. Then when I went off to seminary, I met all of his friends became my friends for the most part. The one friend that he had that he really liked, he and I didn't get along, and he was the one who was very creative, from everything I've heard about him, but just a little too edgy for me. Instead, I made friends with all the other guys that he knew, and including one who became my best friend, and we played all the time. Interestingly enough, it came about because I was reading I brought my D&D books with me, and I had the Red Box, and I was reading through, and somebody came up behind me and said, "Hey, do you play?" And I said, "Yeah." And we got together and started playing, and then it just kind of spread from there, and that's how I made friends in that place. It wasn't through any shared connections. It was kind of, if you were from this area, you kind of stuck with other people from that area. And while I admit I puppy dog tailed right after my friend all the time, eventually I got to hang out with some of these other people and spread my social wings a bit. I had a lot of, crippling insecurities back then, and I was, for the most part, fairly kind of withdrawn and an introvert. But once I started playing these games and I unlocked, what I could use my imagination and I could tell a story for these people and entertain them, I started to break through that. And it's not just an evolution of my gaming style, it was an evolution of me, the person. I became more confident in my storytelling because I had all these people who wanted to play my game and were interested in playing my game. And my group kept expanding and expanding. At the top level, we had 8 people around the table, which was quite a bit. Especially my style was very personal. When I was creating this campaign, which is my first really big campaign, I was doing it a bit at a time because I had to keep incorporating all these new people. Several of my players had multiple characters, and some of them were just transient characters who players who just came in for a little while. I also had my first taste of a player who got really kind of addicted to it. We had to actually ask him not to play anymore because his grades were slumping. He was going to get kicked out academically. So we tried to help him out, but finally we just said cold turkey. We can't play this. You're too far, which was unfortunate because he was a really sweet guy, and I think it really helped him out too, which is part of how he got so addicted. And it was a major part of my life, and my style started changing though. I still stuck with the rules for the most part, but all of a sudden the narrative became far more important because I had all these characters and I had to keep telling a story after story after story. I had my first prophecy in that game where I kind of roadmapped where I could envision these characters going and came up with these things, these challenges for them to hit, and then I thought I would try to make the storyline spin and fit and make these things work. Some of them were a little extreme, and now I realize that prophecy is kind of heavy-handed. I don't use that anymore. But it was an interesting time, and I planned on having a really nice long campaign. These characters got up to like 11th level and backed me. We played a lot. By this time, I did have the masters or the expert set and the companion set, so we were ready for some great adventures. And then I got kicked out of the seminary, which brought that group to a screaming halt. Unfortunately, didn't end all my friendships. I'm still friends with the person that I played with, and if I met any of the others, I'd be glad to sit down and have a beer with them or something. Excuse me, a little throat issue. But anyhow, yeah, it was a great time. I developed a lot. I developed personally. I couldn't break through all my inner demons back then. I still left an introvert, and getting kicked out really kind of shattered me, but I was more assertive and had this fire for gaming, in me pretty solidly. I found a new group when I came home, played with some great people, had some great stories, and really got a taste for the simulationist style. They ran through modules by the book, and it was a lot of fun. I had so much fun in those days, playing that group. I'd go to somebody else's house, and it's a beautiful house, and we'd have a large group, and we were all around the table, and it was great. I had a variety of characters, and I had a lot of fun. Finally, though, went to college, and wouldn't you know it, I went to college determined to change. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like being introverted. I thought I would just new group of people. These people don't know me. I can be who I want to be. So I made deliberate inroads to fight my nature, to do everything I could to not be so introverted, so cripplingly shy, and averse to meeting people, doing social things, especially girls. Really terribly cripplingly shy about girls. And I did everything I could, but the vehicle that saved me again, after some faux pas, some rebuffs, gaming. Found a group, got in with them. They were great people, some of my best friends I've ever had, and we told great stories together. And I got used to a narrative style. The DM who we played with valued the game story more so than accomplishing a module and getting through an adventure. It was about the story was all important. He had an overarching story that would have been worthy of a novel. It was really well designed, really well written. We had fantastic adventures. That changed my style. I started getting almost completely narrative. And this was important for me. I needed to develop those skills so that I could appreciate a wider range of gameplay. And I did. I've played with people who are so by the book that it's almost painful. I've played with rules lawyers at my table, people who are smarter than me, who knew the rules more intimately than me, and I still was able to entertain them and overcome roadblocks where, excuse me, I don't think it works that way. I learned how to do that. It's a good thing for a DM to know. And I've since then just been building my craft and developing. Every step is another way I can evolve and perfect my craft. Right now, I tell a very loose narrative style. Outside of a general roadmap where I want my players to go, I don't script anything anymore. Almost everything comes out of my head. Because, number one, my eyesight's getting bad and I can't, read my own notes sometimes. Number two, I think it feels more organic. I have bullet points that I hit now instead of scripting out an entire narrative. Because, quite honestly, my players don't want to just sit and be talked to when it's time for a monologue. They're likely to butt in because they want to engage, and I'm not going to squelch that. If it changes what that person would then say, I'm not going to jump back to where they were in that point of the conversation. I put down the information that I want to give, and it just comes out as it comes out. If I understand the character that I've created, I can do that. So that really has changed how I play. In every way. I've always been a creative type. I've always loved coming up with new magical items and new ideas. I've never really been one who's gone in with a hammer and tongs and started beating on the rules and wholesale changing them, but I've added house rules and tweaks, things that make sense to me and I think make the game go better. That's all just fun stuff that I've done over the years, and generally I think it's worked out pretty well for me. So those are my thoughts on evolution. I think if you look back at your gaming history, no matter if you've only been playing for a couple of weeks or if you've been playing for decades, honestly, it's a natural part of the gaming experience and the gaming self. The Tao of gaming is not to find the best way and religiously stick to it. It's to sample different styles and plays and find the kind that's best for you. And then every once in a while try something different and see if your tastes have changed. That's the evolution of gaming for me. Obviously, rules have changed. If you track, how gaming styles have changed over the ages, the default setting now is much different than it was in the 70s. But I think the personal journey is just as exciting, if not vastly more so. It helps you to understand the person and understand how a person, their journey has shaped them. Their gaming journey is probably going to parallel that to some extent. So, thanks very much for listening to me. I am Rob. Again, a little more autobiographical than maybe you wanted, but as I said, hopefully everybody can learn a lesson from this or think about things afterwards. I'm here at the Lair of OmnusI. If you like this, please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. I am the kind of game master who loves to hear from his players, and I love to hear from my subscribers, opening up conversations and doing things for you. So thank you again, and I will see you the next time that I crawl in front of the internet and make another one of these videos. Thanks. Farewell.